Yo, so guys, welcome back to another video. This is another Wendover Productions reaction, and I'm loving this channel a lot. The videos that I've been sort of reacting to from him recently, I just really enjoy, and this is another one that, I don't know if this specific video was suggested, but this whole series, the sort of geography problem, and you see down like the suggested videos, there's a lot of videos that sort of involve this kind of concept, and I'm gonna assume this is gonna talk about the size of China. I mean, maybe not actually, because maybe sort of like the terrain, like how a lot of it's mountains and all these things, and how it's sort of surrounded by loads of countries. But again, I don't actually know, so I mean, we're going to see with this video, but hopefully you guys are going to enjoy. Again, I love doing Wendover Productions reactions. I just find them really interesting, sort of learning about what I've been doing recently is the US, but other things like military sort of style things, or whether it be like submarines or aircraft carriers, and now we're going to start delving into other countries. And yeah, I just love learning about this channel, and sort of the videos that I see from this channel I just really enjoy. But we're going to get into this. I'm not going to ramble too much, and yeah, hopefully you guys are going to enjoy, and let's just check this one out, man.
This video was made possible by Squarespace. Build
Squarespace
your
is getting
custom
back with the
website
ad.
for
Come on, man.
10% off by
Getting
going to
that money. You know how it is.
squarespace.com/Wendover. China is a country both blessed and cursed by geography.
Blessed and cursed. Maybe he'll... Wait, what did he touch upon in the US one again? He sort of touched upon how like the land was a lot better, and like how they use certain areas for certain
On one hand,
things.
its land has allowed for the country to grow to almost 1.4 billion people, but on the other hand, it really doesn't have great geographical protection. The beginning of what most people call Chinese history often starts with the Yellow River civilization, and there's a good reason why this settlement grew into the most populous country in the world. The floodplain of the Yellow River is some of the best agricultural land in the
Look
world.
at that.
In fact,
God
the
damn.
entirety of eastern China is perfectly suited for agriculture. This was and still is crucial to the country's success.
So far, it doesn't really seem like a problem. It seems just like a positive. So I'm intrigued to see where he's going to go from here.
What's more, this area is just warm and wet enough that farmers can do what is known as double cropping. Once the main crop of rice is cultivated in June and July, another slightly less productive crop can be planted for October cultivation. This increases rice output by about 25%, which means China can make more food using the same amount of land. Europe mostly relies on wheat to feed its population, which only outputs 4 million calories of food per acre of farmland. Rice, on the other hand, grows 11 million calories worth per acre. It's easy to see why there are so many people in China. But China does have its geographical challenges. To the south, it borders 3 countries: Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar. The borders between these 3 countries and China seem almost arbitrarily set, because they sort of were. Vietnam's was set after the Sino-French War, Laos's was set following its involvement in the Vietnam War, and Myanmar's was set following a small war with China in the 60s. None was naturally set by the environment. All were chosen arbitrarily by humans at war. These countries are not insignificant. Combined, they have nearly 1 million active military personnel, while China, the much larger country, has just over 2 million. Significant conflict with any of these countries would not be a one-sided war. While China would have the technological advantage, any of these 3 countries would have a significant home field advantage.
Look at that.
Vietnam, Laos, and Myanmar are
That scenery is
all
ridiculous.
jungle countries, one of the most difficult environments for warfare. This was part of the reason why the Vietnam War lasted so long. It's just so hard to move troops in the jungle, so everything slows down.
Man.
Without any geographical protection of its borders, it would be significantly easier for Vietnam, Laos, or Myanmar to invade China than the reverse. But China does have an advantage elsewhere. China and India just aren't good friends. They have border disputes, military conflicts, political differences, so it's just hard for them to get along, and that's why Tibet is so important. Tibet was historically its own empire. It was only in the last 300 years that China took it over. Tibetan people are ethnically different than the Han Chinese inhabiting China's east. It just doesn't make sense for Tibet to be part of China, except militarily. Only 0.2% of China's population lives in Tibet, which accounts for nearly 13% of the country's area. More people live in the inner 4 districts of Beijing than the entirety of Tibet. It's just incredibly desolate, but it serves a purpose. If China didn't rule Tibet, then India would. Maybe
Okay.
not formally, but there's little chance that an independent Tibet would not be economically and culturally dominated by either India or China. It just doesn't have enough power economically or militarily to resist. But in China's view, it could not and cannot allow for an Indian Tibet. Indian rule of Tibet would mean that there would be no geographical protection between the populated area of China and India, because Tibet is that geographical protection. Not only does Tibet extend China's border to the Himalayas, it's also an unpopulated area without the transportation infrastructure needed for an invading India to advance a large number of troops towards eastern China. But that also means that there's not the transportation infrastructure necessary for China to advance towards India,
both
but
ways,
China
doesn't it?
is trying to change that. They recently opened the world's highest railroad to Tibet, they're building highways constantly, and they also opened a large airport in Yingqi, just miles away from the border. In the near term, the goal of these projects is to further integrate Tibet into China. The government has
Okay.
all but failed at winning over the native Tibetan population, but they can change who lives in Tibet. Hundreds of thousands of Han Chinese have moved into Tibet, and many more visit each year. The government knows that Tibet's usefulness is diminished if when a foreign military shows up, the population thinks that means liberation rather than invasion. But there's
So they're being quite smart about it. I see that they're being very, very smart
another
about it.
reason China needs Tibet: water. The whole eastern zone of agricultural productivity exists because of all the water from Tibet. The Yellow and Yangtze rivers, China's two longest rivers, both get their water from Tibet, and foreign control of the water supply of the country would, in the government's mind, strike a catastrophic blow to the country's food security. If there were hypothetically a significant mountain range separating Tibet from eastern China, there's a good chance it would still be independent. The water would still come from China, and the mountains would act as the geographical protection that China desires. But to the north is another one of China's assets: Mongolia. It's an enormous, sparsely populated, friendly country. With the Gobi Desert and other desolate terrain, there's just little chance that any modern land-based army could make it across with any efficiency. The supply lines would be enormously long, and by the time they got to the Chinese border, there would have been ample warning. But then again, who would want to invade? Mongolia's only other neighbor is Russia, which is a friendly ally of China both militarily and economically. China need not worry about its northern border until relations with Russia sour. But that leaves the eastern border. Now you would think that this would be China's safest border, the ocean. But you have to consider that powerful states lay just off China's shores, the most powerful one being the US. The United States has a significant Pacific military presence with bases in South Korea, Japan,
Very, very
and Guam.
close.
It's also a close ally with Taiwan, Indonesia, Singapore, and Malaysia, meaning that if a serious dispute with China
So I mean, they're surrounded by US sort of presence all the way around.
occurred, the US would have no problem blockading China and cutting off its maritime access. And of course, China knows this. That's why China has spent so much time, energy, and political capital to establish sovereignty in the South China Sea by building military bases and artificial islands. It knows that it needs these islands so it has sovereignty over the area so it can reach the Pacific in case of war. But ironically, its actions in the area are souring its relations with the very nations that China needs on its side. The Philippines, for example, doesn't have a bulletproof relationship with the US. While the two countries are allies, Philippine leadership has attempted to distance themselves from the US. If China hadn't ruined its relationship with the Philippines over the South China Sea dispute, it could have won them to their side, which would allow China crucial access to the Pacific if the US attempted a naval blockade. China's entire economy relies on exports, so restrictions to access to the oceans would lead to economic ruin. With its enormous population, China also relies on the importation of food, most of which comes on ships. Without jobs or food, there's a good chance that the population would rise up against the government and end the current regime. China didn't want to be a global power spreading its influence to every continent until recently. It wanted to be the dominant power in its region, Asia, but historically it kept its affairs within the region. It never colonized outside of Asia, and for much of history it didn't have a significant navy to project its power around the world. But that has changed because China got so big. China is now of a size where it cannot support its population with its size alone. Self-sufficiency in food production was a major aspect of China's domestic policy for decades, but the country has found a way to move past it as its economy has grown. Africa has emerged almost as China's China.
I've learned a bit about this. It's quite controversial, isn't it? I don't know the ins and outs, and maybe I have to do a video properly, but I have heard things to do with like how they have like a really sort of big presence in certain African countries for like not for the right or the wrong reasons, just for sort of controversial reasons that I'm not too educated on. And maybe this will teach me now, or I should do a video in future that sort of touches upon this more and sort of really focuses on this. But I have heard about
Supplies
this.
the country that supplies the world. China has pumped enormous amounts of money into the continent in what some describe as a form of neo-colonialism. Chinese state-backed corporations have bought huge amounts of land in Africa to mine minerals, drill for oil, and grow food. China now imports more food and oil than it exports. While that is a sign of the development of its economy, it also means that it is now reliant on foreign powers, which is a vulnerable position for a country that is often at odds with some of those foreign powers. China doesn't have bad geography. It has some of the best in the world, which has allowed for it to grow into the largest country in the world. But as it grows into a more and more powerful and developed country, it needs to be cognizant of its vulnerabilities if the current regime wishes to continue. It's clear that because of its geography, the country is in a more precarious position than some may think. If there were ever a reason to go to war with China, the country is surrounded to the south and east by countries that would likely side with NATO powers. To the west and north, China is surrounded by countries and regions without the infrastructure to support China in a war. China is a nuclear power, which means formal war with other superpowers is unlikely, but if it ever were to happen, it's hard to deny.
Just look at that city there. Look at the cities there, man. That is ridiculous. Whatever city this is, that is mind-blowing. Look at it, man. Just look at that.
Its major disadvantage is its geography. I just went through the process of building the new website for my other channel. Half as interesting.
People have suggested this channel a lot, actually. I'm going to have to check this out. Half as interesting. Where is it in the description? I'm going to subscribe because there's a lot of suggestions for me to react to this. I don't know what sort of videos he does. Let's just go to most viewed, most popular. Why photos of the Eiffel Tower at night are illegal. As long as travel distance on Earth. Okay, so this is a very interesting channel then. Why it's legal to be named. Wait, what? I'm going to have to check this channel out, you know. I like the look of this a lot. And it's Wendover Productions' second channel, so I know it's going to be crazy just because of that. But yeah, I have had a lot of suggestions for me to react to that. But still, interesting video this. I love how he goes into these kinds of just random sort of situations, man. This was released in 2017. A lot has changed since then, including Trump, the coronavirus, the military clashes between India and China. A revision might be appropriate. Oh yeah, this is actually quite an old video, so it is probably outdated quite a bit. With the Gobi Desert, there's no chance land-based empire will invade. Mongols, I'm going to do what's called a pro-gamer move. I never realised half as interesting was your other channel. It was only in the last 300 years that China took over. US with 244 years of history. Am I a joke to you? Mongolia is a friendly country. Genghis Khan has joined the chat. Yeah, I swear at one point the Mongolian Empire was like the biggest empire in the world. Indian officials and journalists watching this video, write that down, write that down. Burna's border with China was established by the British Imperial Raj, nothing to do with the 1960s. I see you put Taiwan as an independent country. I also like to live dangerously. There's a lot of controversies between that. There's controversies between like Hong Kong as well. Hong Kong and China, I swear. It is a controversial country for sure. For all reasons that I do actually want to learn about, because I say these things, but it would be interesting to learn why the controversies are there, and just to see these things, like why these are so like, it's such a sort of a country that just sort of deceives me a lot. Like I'm so interested by the country because it's sort of so like, I don't know much about it, but I hear a lot about it kind of thing, and its global importance for so many products. It's just one of those countries I do want to learn more about, man. Still waiting for the Earth's geography problem. Too many people live here. YouTube, China's geographical problem. Trump, I'm listening. I enjoyed this though. I'm definitely going to do more of this geography problem type series. I don't know how this is going to go down, but you know how it is. I love geography type videos, and I'm down to do so many more because I just find them so interesting to watch. But Hopefully you guys enjoyed this reaction, and until next time, like, subscribe, peace.